Hi Mayans, and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're watching for the first time, my name is Blvd Maia, and I talk about everything in my transgender lesbian life that you would really like to know about, but are afraid to ask, because greater understanding makes the world a better place for all of us. Now, I've been gone for a few weeks because I'm making mental health my priority right now. And of course, when you're transgender, mental health can be a tricky thing to maintain, such as what happened to me last week when a YouTuber with a very large platform said some kind of not very nice things about my genitalia. In the past, this is the sort of thing that would easily have sent me into a gender dysphoria spiral. And I know for many of you out there that can still be a problem, so I thought I would give gender dysphoria a little bit of a closer look this week. And according to the American Psychiatric Association, it is a conflict between a person's physical or assigned gender and the gender with which he, she, they identify, sometimes described as being uncomfortable with their body, particularly developments during puberty. It then goes on to say that people with gender dysphoria may often experience significant distress. Yeah, no kidding. Now, not every transgender person experiences gender dysphoria, but a lot of you out there sure do. And of course, the processes to relieve gender dysphoria, whether they are medical or therapy, can often take a significant amount of time. And so for the short term, I've often seen transgender people come up with coping mechanisms, just something to get them through the day. So with that in mind, I put it to you, my viewers, how exactly you experience gender dysphoria and what do you do when those feelings hit? And as I expected, all of you wrote in with a wide variety of your personal triggers for your dysphoria and how you cope with them. For instance, Holly Victoria Quinn wrote, "Outwards my voice and facial/body hair, my T-bombs," and I want to get back to that in a second. And she also said that she wished it was as easy to get an orchiectomy as it is to get other plastic surgeries. When she refers to T-bombs, I'm assuming Holly was talking about her testicles, because they of course are the testosterone factories in our bodies, and the fact that she then goes on to mention an orchiectomy, which, if you're not familiar, is the process of removing them, and once you've gotten rid of testosterone, some of the other changes become a lot easier to accomplish. Electrolysis and laser, for instance, become a lot more effective. And Holly wasn't alone in finding her voice to be a trigger for dysphoria, and the only way to change that is through a surgery, which can be a little bit iffy, or by vocal training. Every time we open our mouths to speak, we hear our own voice in our heads. And so sometimes that'll drive us not to speak at all, such as what Cassandra described when she said, "This far along, about all that's left is my voice." During those times, I get very quiet, even if I'm with a group of friends. It's worsened when someone notices how I went from chatting freely to nothing at all. What she does is she usually gets a little me time, and that really helps her. And being quiet, I guess, is a strategy for your voice, but ultimately you're gonna have to speak. And it can be really tough when people point out things to us that are really trigger points that they don't even know about, and explaining the whole process might not be something we're interested in doing. Grace Lowe also describes something else she does to relieve her dysphoria, and she says that she makes a concerted effort to be more feminine presenting to the world. "I make sure my voice is as classically female as I can get it. I make sure my makeup is spot on, taking a bit of time on the details. I wear my prettiest clothes. And of course, I concentrate on my movement." All of these things to mask my feelings of not quite being the woman I want to be. And yeah, that is the toughest thing to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I think we all have this sort of image in our head of what we want to look like. And if I might suggest something, there comes a day where in the future you realize you're just a woman, and it doesn't actually matter what you look like or what stereotypes you're fulfilling, but that takes a lot of experience and a lot of confidence to get there. Now, I'm not sure precisely how to pronounce this next person's name or how they identify, but A. Pauline Autumn Grant says, "I finished my transition, but I'm still fighting to get my ID changed. I'm unemployed at the moment, and the worst thing for me is having to justify to a future employer or at the job center who I am. Also, if I have to pick up a package at the post office and show my ID, I've had to justify why my ID card does not match who I am." It's not really a feeling of dysphoria, it's a feeling of being really pissed off for having to justify my identity. And that there's an interesting situation, because what A. Pauline is describing is not actually necessarily a physical form of dysphoria, but one that is a social form of dysphoria. I can't tell you how many times I outed myself when I went out to eat before I legally changed my ID. The fact that they match who we are is such an important thing in our new lives. And of course, the best way to handle that kind of dysphoria is to change your ID, which may or may not be possible where you live, for legal reasons or financial reasons or what have you. Now, Andrea Macpherson wrote an entire essay. And I'm not going to read all of it, but there was a part of it that I really liked, where she talks about the feeling of dysphoria being very much like the proverbial square peg in a round hole. That she says, "How do I deal with it? Poorly." Andrea, I think we all deal with it poorly at some point in time, and that can be so trying on your mental health when that happens. But she also says something that I would really like to highlight because I think it's a great technique. I try to build up my self-confidence when the dysphoria isn't so bad. I imagine that can take a lot of different forms. Support groups, just talking it out with allies, anything that it takes to build up that mental cushion for when you do crash. Now, Kelly Williams 81 described a situation under which they often feel gender dysphoria. When I have to dress like my old self around people that don't know that I want to transition. It can be very difficult to function around people who don't know you're transgender. I remember those early days before I became out about my transition, when all of a sudden my identity felt very much like a costume. When putting on my clothes, my boy clothes, no longer felt right and really just added to my stress. These are all part of the process, the steps that we all have to go through before we can be our authentic selves all the time. And to get from here to there is a minefield of dysphoria. And Christy Woods describes some of those, such as living with stubble 6 of 7 weekdays since I'm still doing electrolysis. For those of you who don't know, when you're doing electrolysis, you have to have a visible hair. And as you can imagine, when you're looking in the mirror and you see stubble, it can be very stressful, which I think she describes pretty well when she says hating my hair, face, and/or body shape, which I think just about covers everything, right? Seeing their look when I'm red. That sudden look of recognition that they understand who you are and what you're doing. And of course, people sometimes stare, and all of that is rude. Don't do that. Sarah Zedek reinforces that facial hair trigger for dysphoria when she says, these days my dysphoria is pretty exclusively tied to my facial hair. I see her in the mirror for a second, but then I see my beard shadow. However, Sarah also gives us a coping technique for that, and I think this is great to hear. What I've taken to doing is covering the lower part of my face for a moment and finding the features that make me happy. And that's great, because I've never actually heard that before. If we give ourselves a chance first to see those things we are happy with, it can help us deal with those things that make us a little uncomfortable. We actually judge ourselves by extremely high beauty standards that are really hard for most people to achieve, including cisgender women. If we actually look around at the world around us, which is something that Rachel mentions when she says, sometimes I can tell it's goalpost shifting because other women will start looking less feminine as well. One of my best friends is an absolutely beautiful cisgender girl. In fact, you might say she fulfills the feminine ideal. She has that kind of body. However, I once got in a conversation with her where she said that she envied my jaw and my jawline. And I was really startled by that because it didn't occur to me that she might envy anything of mine as a transgender woman. So find yourself a supportive cisgender female friend and let her tell you what she envies about you and the way you look. I think so often we concentrate on the things we envy in them and forget that sometimes that can work both ways. And it can be incredibly affirming for both of you when all you're doing is complimenting each other. And I know that it's often hard to have that larger perspective when we're right in the middle of this shit and just feeling like crap and just want to cry. But I know the temptation to just kind of wallow in it is something that is very hard to resist. And Rachel here actually says that she does that, but that also that when she feels bad, she goes to sleep, and when she wakes up, she often feels better about things. And rest does have a direct correlation to our mental health. And if you need to cry, cry. I enjoy a good cry myself all the time. It can be a great stress releaser. Now, DK Babs in Cheeseland says, I talk about it with my partner, and also what helps me a lot is watching trans YouTubers. There are a lot of means of support out there on the internet, whether it's trans Twitter or trans discussion groups or trans YouTubers, which is one of the reasons I make videos like this. Join Finit. Really, guys, you really need to work on these screen names. I can't say. Say them out loud before you decide on them. I play video games. It gets my mind to focus on something else. Go for a walk, pet my cat, sleep it away. Having a pet and their unconditional love is a great means of emotional support. Going for a walk and getting that exercise, getting out into nature, into fresh air. I gotta think that a lot of us have played video games to distract our minds in the past. Not to mention that it's great to be able to play with a female avatar that kind of embodies all the things that we wish we looked like, right? All great, great things to do. And Bex Being Bex gives us the final gender dysphoria busting technique. And she says, I call my mom and talk about rubbish. I just love the UK English. Reach out, talk to loved ones, let them know how you're feeling. And also let them know that you don't necessarily expect them to fix it, you just expect them to be a voice in the dark. And she goes on to say, also watch crap movies, which is one of my favorite things to do. I myself watch way too much Hallmark Christmas movies and Lifetime Christmas movies than can possibly be healthy. It just feeds a part of my soul that needs to believe in romance and love. And I'm gonna leave it right there, but I hope I've given all of you something to think about, as well as letting those of you out there who are currently suffering from gender dysphoria know that you are not alone. Now, if you have any questions about gender dysphoria or experience it in a different way than I've described, please put it in the comments below. Especially put down things that help you deal with that gender dysphoria, because I think we would all like to hear those. As always, my social media is also down below, and if you have a dime to spare, please consider giving to my Patreon to support what I do. And on that note, please like this video by giving it a thumbs up, please share this video, and please subscribe, and see you around the interwebs.